How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Aleph, Daf 41 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends, Daf 41 is cool because it's the first daf of the second parak of Masechta Kiddushin, which is cool. It's a new parak. There's 4 prakim in Masechta Kiddushin, and we're up to the second one. The first parak was half of the Masechta, so it's pretty cool. It's exciting times over here. And it's parak Ha'ish Mekadesh Bo V'Shluchos. Today's daf is going to talk a shtickle about Shlichus. Interesting stuff. All right, let's go weiter. Zog the Mishnah Ha'ish Mekadesh Bo V'Shlucho. So a fellow can be Mekadesh a fellow. Bo. Either he could do it, right? Which is, I imagine that's probably the most, if anybody's been to a chasna before, usually it's the chosin himself as Mekadesh the Kale. But he can also appoint a messenger. Isha miskadesh is bo v'shlucha, and a fella can become betrothed either by her accepting the ring herself, or the kesef, or whatever it is herself. I assume it probably doesn't apply to kiddush bia. Uvishlucha or her messenger, meaning that would be ba, but uvishlucha, maybe that's just for like shtar and kesef. Anyways, okay. Ha'ish mekadesh is bito k'shinaira bo v'shlucha. Now a fellow can accept kiddushay kesef, can accept kiddushin on behalf of his daughter when she's a naira, as long as she's not a bogeres. Bo v'shlucha, the Gemara is actually going to ask about a ketana. Bo v'shlucha, either he can accept it or his messenger can accept the kiddushin for him on behalf of his daughter. Hashta b'shlucha mekadesh bo miboya. Oh, so the Gemara. Why does the Mishnah have to tell us both that an ish himself can be mekadesh as well as a shaliach? If a shaliach can be mekadesh on his behalf, kal v'chomer, he himself could be mekadesh. So why do we need to say it? Just say ish mekadesh b'shlucha. So hashta b'shlucha mekadesh bo miboya. If he can be mekadesh with a messenger, with an emissary, is an emissary like the same thing as a messenger? Is that like interchangeable? Miboya, so certainly, right? If he can be mekadesh via a messenger, so then obviously he could be mekadesh himself by being mekadesh himself. Omar Rav Yosef mitzvah bo yoser mi b'shlucho givaldig. So says Rav Yosef enachinami. What the Mishnah is coming to teach us by saying bo is to teach us that it's a greater mitzvah for him to do it himself. That you could be mekadesh via a shaliach, but mitzvah bo yosem b'shlucha, says Rashi, mitzvah bo yosem b'shlucha dechi osik gufo b'mitzvah, that when he himself is being oisik in the mitzvah, mekabel socher tvei, he receives more reward rather than having somebody else do it for him. Givaldi. Ki other of Safra machrich reisha, like Rav Safra, he would singe the head of, I guess, the sheep or something for Shabbos, right? He would take part in the preparations for Shabbos. Rava malach shivuto, Rava would salt the fish. They would get involved in it themselves because mitzvah bo yosemi b'shlucho. Ikadam, those who say beha isur nami isba. Oh, you hear this? So those who say, one second, this isn't just that when it says, right, that ish mekadesh bo v'shlucha, it's not just that it's better for him to be mekadesh because mitzvah bo yosem b'shlucha. It's taka a problem to be mekadesh a fella al yedei shaliach, by way of a shaliach. Ikadam, I can read that again. Beha isur nami isba. There's a problem if you're mekadesh via a shaliach. Kidu of Yehuda Amarav, like Ravido Amarav. The Mavido Marab, Osur le'adam she'ikadesh sa'isha ad she'yirena. A fellow cannot be mekadesh a fella until he sees what she looks like. Shemayir eba davar meguna v'tiskano love. Maybe if he when he sees this person who he's going to marry, maybe he'll see something that will be unattractive to him, and it could be a problem. And the Torah says that you have to love your fellow, or in this case your fella, like yourself. And therefore, wouldn't it be very if a fellow is mekadesh a fella without ever having seen her, and then after being Mekadesh her via Shaliach, he finally sees her, and he's like feeling like maybe he doesn't feel so comfortable being married to this fella, and then they're gonna have he's not gonna relate to her as well as he should. Well, that's no good. So therefore, it's not just that it's better to be Mekadesh, for himself to be the Mekadesh, but it's problematic to be Mekadesh via Shaliach, because you have to see her first. You have to see the person you're getting married to. So when Rav Yosef says mitzvah bo yosem b'shlucha aseifa itmar, it's talking about her. Ha'isha miskadeshes bo v'shlucha. That a fella could be miskadeshes either by her herself, accepting the Kiddushin, or via an emissary. Hashta b'shlucha mikadcha bo miboya. But if she could be miskadeshes via a shaliach, then certainly she herself could accept the Kiddushin. Rav Yosef mitzvah ba yoser mi b'shlucha, says Rav Yosef, yes, even though she could send an emissary. I don't know if emissary is the right word, but I like it. That even though she could send an emissary to receive her Kiddushin, nonetheless, mitzvah ba yosem b'shlucha. It's better for her to do it herself. Just like Rav Safra and Rave would get involved in the Shabbos preparations. Aval beha isur leizba. But in terms of, so it would be better for her to accept her own Kiddushin, but if she does send an emissary, there's nothing wrong with that, because Rish Lakish, like Rish Lakish, the Amar Rish Lakish, Tav L'Mesav Tondu, Mi L'Mesav Armelu, that she would rather, meaning when it came to the fellow, we said he shouldn't be Mekadesh via a Shaliach without ever having seen her, because if he ends up not finding something in Maguna, it's going to be a problem. So shouldn't it also be a problem if she sent? Is there noise outside? I hope that there's no power washing now. But if she sends an emissary to accept the Kiddushin on her behalf without ever having seen him, so the Gemara says that that's actually okay, because we has a concept of that a fella says Tav L'Mesav Tandu, better to have two bodies Mi L'Mesav Armelu than to be a widow, meaning for her, she would prioritize being married over being attracted to the fellow, and therefore sending an emissary to get married would work. Would work, and we're not concerned that maybe she's going to find a davar maguna in him. Okay. Ha'ish Mekadesh as bitok shinaira. So the Mishnah had said that a father can accept kesef kiddushin on behalf of his daughter when she is a naira. Kshinaira in kshiktana lo. When she's a naira, when she's 12, but not when she's younger than that. Miser le Rav, the Amar of Yudam Rav. This is helpful to Rav. That Rav Yudam Rav says, "V'yitem Rabbi Lazar." Some takasei Rabbi Lazar. Osur lo adam shikadesh is bitok kshiktana. It's forbidden for a fellow to accept kesef kiddushin on behalf of his daughter when she's a minor, until she gets older and says, I'm interested in marrying this person. So, of course, we talk all the time about kiddushin for a katana and how a father could be mekadesh his daughter midoraisa, but still we say that it's a problem to do so until she gets older and she says, I'm interested in marrying this fellow, and we say that that's at least the age of a naira. Okay. Now, for the rest of the daf, we are going to be discussing the concept of shlichus, of appointing an emissary. I really don't know if the word emissary is right in this context, but again, I just like it. I think I like it because all the Chabad shluchim are referred to as emissaries of the Rebbe. So there's this I don't know, it's a connotation of Chabad shlichus if I use the word emissary instead of messenger. An emissary, it always sounds very official. That's why maybe I question if it's the right thing over here, because it sounds very official. I feel like an emissary of the king goes to deliver a message, an appointee. But I like the word emissary. What do you want me to tell you? Shlichus minolam. So how do we know that shlichus works? So I said, Ish mekadesh bo v'shlucho. You can have a shaliach. Right? Sorry, mom. You could have but he can make a shliach. She can make a shliach. The father can make a shliach. Where's all the shlichus coming from? Where's all this emissarying coming from? So the Tanya is we learn in the Brisa of okay. So the pasuk says in the context of divorce, v'shilcha mi beiso, right? That she sends her away from the house. So now we make all sorts of drushes on v'shilcha, v'shilach, milamet shehu oseh shaliach. So like I guess v'shilcha is like v'shil. It's from the word like v'shilach, to send away. That he could make a shaliach for gerushin. V'shilcha. So it's v'shilcha that he sends her away, right? So he sends her away. So he could even make. But v'shilach from shlichus, he could even make an emissary. Now v'shilcha means he sends her away. But if you read it without the mapikeh, it's v'shilcha that she can oichit make a shaliach. Milamet shehi oiseh shaliach. V'shilach v'shilcha. Now we have there's two psukim by divorce. It says right. And then two psukim later it says it says a second time. So it says it twice. An emissary can appoint an emissary, another emissary. Okay, so we find shlichus. This was on the context of divorce. How do you know oichet that there's shlichus in the context of kiddushin? And if we say, well, if it works by divorce, then why shouldn't it work by kiddushin? I'll tell you why it shouldn't work by kiddushin. Where am I? Because there's generally more options for gerushin. Gerushin, divorce can work even against her will. And now we're saying it could work even by way of an emissary. Kiddushin cannot work against her will. And we'll argue that we can't assume that Kiddushin can work via an emissary. Okay, fine. Where am I? So Omar Kra, so the pasuk says, V'yotzav ha'isa makish avoya liyitzia. Fine. So rather, we learn it out from, the pasuk says, V'yotzav ha'isa, we compare Kiddushin to Gerushin, ma'yitzia ma'ashvei shaliach, af havoya nami ma'ashvei shaliach. Right, the pasuk says v'yotzav ha'isa. We compare kiddushin and gerushin. So if shlichus works for gerushin for divorce, so an oichit can work for kiddushin. Okay, so we're done with kiddushin and gerushin. Fine. So we learn out. Okay, so there's shlichus by divorce. We learn out that shlichus oichit works by kiddushin because of v'yotzav ha'isa makish havoy liyitzia. What about by truma? We learn in the Mishnah. Omer l'shlucho. If a fellow says to his emissary, say, Trom, go and separate truma for me. Okay, guy's got tevel that needs to be tied. So he says to his emissary, go and separate tithes from my stuff. Toim kedaz balabayis. So he separates truma like the intention of the balabayis, right? Truma, of course, doesn't have a fixed amount. Meiser obviously is a tenth, is 10%. But truma doesn't have a fixed amount. Midoraisa could be any amount. Now, sort of the standard amount is 1/50, 2%. So he separates based on what the owner would, so the emissary separates the truma based on what the owner would want. But if he doesn't know what the owner wants, well then he does sort of the standard amount, which is echad mechamishim, 1/50. Piches asar if he did 1/40th, or hosef asar if he did 1/60th, truma so truma, that's also fine. Minala. How do we know that a fellow can appoint an emissary when it comes to truma? And if you can say, well, you can use an emissary for divorce, so why can't you use an emissary for truma? I'll tell you why. Truma is already tyrus. It has a level of holiness. Divorce doesn't have a level of holiness. So therefore, sure, divorce, you can have somebody else do it for you. But I might think that truma, which has kedusha, you can't have somebody else do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So Amar Kra, atem gam atem. The pasuk says gam atem. The gam also is l'rabo, says shaliach, is to include the shaliach, is to say that you can separate truma via a shaliach. V'nichtov rachmana b'truma v'nesu anach v'nigmu minei. So now, why don't we just write shlichus by truma, and we don't need to write shlichus by divorce? And we'll say if it works by truma, which is holy, certainly shlichus should work by divorce. So mishum de'ika lemifrach sheken yeshna b'machshava. But we could say, well, not necessarily, meaning even though you can use a messenger, an emissary, when it comes to truma, I might think, well, you can have somebody else do it for you, because after all, truma, you can really just separate truma b'machshava even just by, right, you could have a whole bunch of tevel and start eating from it and just say, look, that stuff over there, that's where I'm going to separate truma from. So you don't even actually have to physically do anything. You can just have a thought, and that's enough for truma. So maybe that's why also an emissary works for truma. But maybe that's not the case by Kiddushin, where you actually have to do something. Okay, fine. So you need psukim to teach us emissaries by divorce. We need psukim to teach us emissaries by truma. V'hadetnan. What about the following Mishnah? Chabure she'ovad pischo. By kodshim, by korbanos. You have a group of people that they're gonna do the korban pesach together, but they lost the sheep. So they said to one of the Cheverman, go out and find the sheep for us and slaughter it for you, right? They lost the sheep, so they appointed one of them who was going to go find the sheep and slaughter it. And sure enough, the fellow who they appointed located the sheep, slaughtered it. But at the same time, they actually maybe got a little bit nervous that the fellow wasn't going to find it. So they bought a replacement sheep and slaughtered it. If the sheep that was found was slaughtered first by this fellow who they appointed to go search for it, so then the fellow who was appointed can eat from the animal that he found, and they can join him as well. Minalan. How do we know this? How do we know basically what's happening there? They appointed him their emissary to find the sheep and slaughter it for them for their korban pesach by kodshim. And we're saying that appointment works. How do we know this? And if you're going to say, well, maybe we can learn it from the fact that you can appoint an emissary for truma as well as for Kiddushin, so why not by kodshim? I'll tell you why not. Well, relative to kodshim, to korbanis, truma and gittin are not as holy. And on the holiness levels, kodshim is the highest, korbanis are the highest. So even though shlichus works by truma and by Kiddushin, it might not work by kodshim. So rather nafkale mid Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. We learn out shlichus by kodshim from Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. The Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha says Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha meinayin sheshluchu sheladim kemoso. But how do we know that a fellow can appoint an emissary, and that emissary is like he himself is doing it? Shenemar, as the apostle says, v'shachatu also kol kaladas Yisrael ben Arabaim, that by the korban pesach, all of the nation of Israel need to slaughter it in the afternoon. V'chikol hakol kulan shochtin. Is everybody slaughtering the korban pesach? V'lo eno shochet ele echad. Only one person, I assume what this means is per chabura, is slaughtering the korban pesach. So not everybody is slaughtering the korban pesach. One person is doing it on behalf of several people. So we see that a fellow can appoint an emissary, and that emissary, it's like he himself is doing it. And we learn that shlucho shaladim kimoso, and that is learned out from korban pesach, from kodshim. So we see that there's shlichus, that there's emissaries when it comes to kodshim as well. So we see we have psukim that teach us emissaries by gittin, by truma, by kodshim. So now the Gemara is trying to figure out, how come we need so many psukim? How come we need 3 psukim? We have psukim, as I just said, by Gittin, by Truma, by Kachim. Do we really need all of those psukim? V'neisi hanoch v'nigmu mine. Why don't we learn out Truma and Gittin from Kachim? Mishum de'ika lemifrach ma lekachim sheken rov ma'asein al yedei shaliach. That, the thing is that when it comes to Kachim, if you think about it, Kachim kind of, by definition, is done by emissaries, right? Any Zarim, any non-Kohanim, can't offer korbanos. They can slaughter their korban, but it stops there. Mikabal va'elach mitzvahs kehuna. That Kabbalah Sadam, Malachas Sadam, Zrika Sadam, Aktara, Semurin, all that stuff has to be done by the Kohanim who serve as, I think it's a Shiloh, they Shluchah Rachmana, Shluchah Anan, Seder. But the korbanos by definition require emissarieship, emissary. Okay, shlichus. So therefore, it's not fine. So the shlichus when it comes to kachim, you can set aside a shliach to slaughter the korban pesach. Kachim is something that inherently requires shlichus. So I understand why shlichus in general is applicable to kachim. I may not assume so by Gittin and by Truma. So then the Gemara presses on. Fine, okay, so we can't learn out that just because there's shlichus by Gittin, there's shlichus by Truma, for example. But Teisi chadami tarte, do you really need all three? Can't we just have two of them? And then the third one we can say, well, if in those two cases there's shlichus, then they're here too. Hey Teisi, okay, tell me more, which two? Lo nichtav rachmana b'kodshim v'teisi mehanach. Well, what if we omit shlichus when it comes to kodshim? Leave that out. And let's learn out kodshim from Truma and Gittin. Nisht. Malahanach, when it comes to Truma and Gittin, sheken yeshnan choletz al kodshim. As we had earlier with Gittin and Truma, I think we also had, did we also have it with yeshnan choletz al kodshim? Yeah, that's what we said earlier. Then, relative to korbanis, Truma and Gittin are not in the same kedusha level. And therefore, I can understand why there's shlichus when it comes to Truma and Gittin, but I can't assume that by kachim it's the same, because kachim is a higher level. Maybe you have to do it yourself. Lo nichtav rachmana b'gerishin. Okay, so omit shlichus by gerishin. V'teisi mehanach. And learn out shlichus by gerishim from the fact that there's shlichus by Truma and Kodshim. But ma'lahanach sheken yeshem b'machshava. But both by Truma and by Kodshim, thought alone is enough. If I have in mind that I'm going to bring a certain animal as a korban, I got to do it. If I have in mind that I'm going to set aside a certain part of the produce for Truma, it's considered set aside. That's not the case when it comes to Gittin. You have to give a get. Ela lo lichtov. Right, so therefore they have that sort of aspect of their execution, which doesn't exist by. So maybe in addition to having machshava, you can set aside an emissary. It's another kind of detail of Truma and Kachim. So I would need to have a pasuk by Gittin. But why don't we omit by Truma, shlichus by Truma v'teisi mehanach, and let's learn out that by Truma you can appoint an emissary from the fact that by Kachim and by Gittin you can appoint an emissary. The Gemara says, Achinami, Yutake, right, we don't need a pasuk for shlichus by Truma. Ve'ela, atem lomali. Then why do we have that? We said earlier from gam, the word gam teaches that also emissaries could separate Truma. But now we're saying that we can learn out emissaries from Gittin and from Kodshim. So why do I need the pasuk gamatem? We need it for Rabbi Yanai. The Omer, Rabbi Yanai says, Rabbi Yanai, gamatem ma'atem bnei bris av shluchachem bnei bris. That when appointing an emissary, it has to be a yid. Just like you are a Yidden, so also your emissaries for Truma need to be Yidden. But halamali, why do I need a pasuk to teach me that the emissary needs to be a Yid? Can't we learn that out from Rabbi Bar Abba, Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Yechanan, Eino Eved Naisa Shaliach Likabel Get Miad Baila Shal Isha? An Eved Knaini cannot be appointed as an emissary to accept a get on behalf of a fella. Because an Eved Knaini is not shaykh to Gittin and Kiddushin, and if he's not shaykh, right, because there's no Gittin and Kiddushin for there's no Kiddushin for an Eved Knaini. So because there's no Kiddushin and Memela no Gittin for an Eved Knaini, so he also can't be an emissary, for Gittin and Kiddushin. So Itzrich, so the Gemara answers, no, we still do need a pasuk, because Hakadati Chamina may have thought to say Eved delabar eterehu klal. Look, an Eved is not shaykh to Gittin and Kiddushin bichlal aval Ovid kochavim hol ve'ise b'truma denavshe. But an Ovid kochavim can separate his own truma, as we learned about Masechta Gittin. If an Ovid kochavim has land in Eretz Yisrael, the kedusha of the land does not go away, and he still needs to separate. He still separates trumas and maasros from that land. So the Tanan is learned in Mishnah Ovid Kochavim ve'akusi shetarmu trumas and truma. Ovid Kochavim or akusi that separate trumas, it's still truma. It's going to be truma. So therefore, I may have thought to say that since they are shaykh to truma, ema shaliach nami ovid. So I may have thought that take in Ovid Kochavim can be a shaliach to separate truma. Kamaj malon. So gam atem is to say no. Your shaliach needs to be a yid. Ulu Reb Shimon de Potar. But what about Reb Shimon who says that Ovid Kochavim does not separate trumas and maasros? So then why do I need gamatim? The Tanan is we learn in the Mishnah trumas Ovid Kochavim midamas. The truma of an Ovid Kochavim, if it falls into chulin, so then the whole thing becomes a mixture and it becomes a problem. It needs 1 part to 100 parts, I believe, to become batal. Yeah. V'chayovin oleh chomesh, and if you eat it by accident, v'chayev chomesh. Be'etzem, the truma of an Ovid Kochavim is truma. Reb Shimon poter. Reb Shimon says no, it's not truma. And if that's the case, atem gam atem lamali, then why do I need this pasuk of gam atem? What does it teach me? According to the Tanakama, it teaches that the emissary needs to be a yid, even though an Ovid Kochavim can separate truma. Nonetheless, your emissary for truma needs to be a yid. But according to Reb Shimon, who says that Ovid Kochavim cannot separate truma, so memela they cannot be your emissary for truma. So why do I need gamatem? Well, it's I need it because Hakadaite Chamina I may have thought to say the whole of Omar Mar, since we said atem v'lo arisin, you separate your truma. A sharecropper cannot separate truma for you. Atem v'lo shutfin, your partner cannot separate truma for you. Atem v'lo apotropis, a representative of the Yisomim cannot separate truma for them, which I believe that we learned about maybe in Gittin. Atem v'lo atorim es she'eno shelo, you have to separate your own truma. You can't, right? Not somebody who separates somebody else's truma for him without their knowledge. So ema atem v'lo shluchachim. So I might think that also when it says atem, it means also, you and not your emissary. You can't have an emissary by truma. I may have thought that. So kamash malon. So therefore it says no. Gam atem, gam is to include an emissary that you can have an emissary for truma. Wow, that was interesting. Friends, that was Daf Mem Aleph from Masechta Kiddushin, the first daf of the second parak of Masechta Kiddushin. We talked about that a fellow could be Mekadesh Bo V'Shlucho, although we said not to do V'Shlucho because that could be problematic. We said that a fellow could be Miskadeshes Bo V'Shlucho. That was pretty interesting stuff. And then we talked about the sources of Shlichus, by Gittin, by Kiddushin, by Truma, by Kodshim. Very, very interesting stuff. Friends, that was Daf Mem Aleph, Masechta Kiddushin. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.